Welcome to the astrology of April 29 to May 5th of 2020. My name is Sabrina Monarch of monarchastrology.com. I'm a soul-centered evolutionary astrologer, and I invite you to tune in with the feelings and images that arise for you as you listen to this broadcast. And this week we have Venus in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces. And this brings a buzz into our field, into our airwaves of romanticism, universal values, and cosmic love. Venus is, of course, an archetype of love, and Neptune relates to enchantment, fantasy, and dreams, and both the disorienting and creative powers of the imagination. If you're familiar with astrological aspects, you know that the square or the 90-degree angle relates to tension and conflict, also dynamism. So it is quite possible that with a Venus-Neptune square, we will be more readily confronted with our delusions and fantasies in love. Sometimes disillusionment hurts if we were attached to the fantasy, but other times disillusionment is our greatest healing. Like the famous words from Rumi, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you've built against it. We can possess barriers to love that are illusions. These barriers, and to speak of Venus in a cerebral sign like Gemini, are often mental concepts. If we want to engage this transit, we might consider what mental concepts we are running about love and relationship, and consider where we are ready for an upgrade. This pivot puts us in touch with seeker energy, puts us in touch with a quest eon, or a question, which will support us in magnetizing teachings and experiences that help us discover new perspectives and resources. Love itself is a universal value. So is the longing to return home or to be at one with Source, a generalized feeling that makes its way into many of our fantasy projections. If I have this particular relationship or this job or this special circumstance, I will feel redemption. I will feel profoundly at ease. Yet not acknowledging the infinite waters from which the wellspring springs leads us to projection and myopia instead of being at one with the actual love that we seek. The amazing thing about the vibration of love that we so seek and desire is that it is a remarkably abundant and plentiful and infinite resource, one that magnifies and regenerates. We only have to discover how to attune with it and how to be it. A statement I understand is both an abstract concept and a real experience that one discovers how to live into. While Venus is in Gemini for literally a few months because of the upcoming retrograde, this is an amazing time for absorbing media about love and cosmic love. It is a great time to experiment, converse about, and apply what we learn. Gemini learns by taking in information and repeating it, mimicking it, if you will. So when we learn something that we're excited about and we tell people about it, it's a very Gemini thing to do. Some of my favorite resources on love have been the works of John Wellwood, a psychotherapist who writes about love, Ecosexuality, When Nature Inspires the Arts of Love, and any of Sanaya Roman's books. These are channeled texts which elevate me anytime I read them. And I'm currently drawn to A Course in Miracles. Haven't read it yet though. Share in the comments your favorites so that you all can share resources with each other. So before we get into the week, a few announcements. One is that I have a mailing list, and if you would like to receive these forecasts in written form to your mailbox every week, you can sign up for my mailing list in the link that I will share below. And this is also a great way to stay in the loop about special offerings and to be notified when my Evolutionary Astrology Intensive opens for enrollment. This is an amazing course, and I would love for you to know about it when it is open. It's currently in session. I'm going to be starting a Kickstarter in June 2020. June will begin the 6th year of writing these weekly forecasts, and now more recently speaking them. And I'll be asking for your support to crowdfund the year ahead. I'll be offering astrology readings, discounted tuition to my evolutionary astrology course, and more. These forecasts have long been free and providing so much value to many people's lives, and I truly need the support of you as my community to thrive. I aim to keep sharing valuable free content for years to come, and I ask for your help achieving a salary for the consistent high-value content I share with the public. This will be my first Kickstarter, and please help me make it a success. We've also got a new episode of the Magic of the Spheres podcast. And this one is Healing with the Centaurs, Chiron, Pholus, Curiclo, and Okirhoe with David Leskowitz. And this was such a cool episode. We learned all about these archetypes and went beyond, Chiron as the wounded healer. What does that mean? And, Pholus, Curiclo, and Okirhoe are more obscure archetypes, and yet we have them in our charts. They're asteroids and planets that we have. And the sense of the episode, like these centaurs are about healing, and I really felt this soothing, healing kind of energy in the conversation itself. And David and I both share the perspective that the planets and the asteroids are not just these archetypes or concepts, but that they're beings. And so Venus, for example, is both a concept, a conceptual framework, and a being. Like there's an actual goddess or actual Venus to interact with. And David has spent so much time working with these asteroids, with these centaurs, that it was like he was an intermediary between those beings and us. So if you want to learn more about what these centaurs are and how they show up in people in terms of personality and experiences, and learn more about these archetypes in general, then tune into that episode where you listen to podcasts, or in the link that I'll share below. We've got so many good episodes on Magic of the Spheres. It's super binge worthy, so go check it out. And here is our week. It starts out with Mercury conjunct Uranus on April 30th at 8:40 p.m. Pacific. And Mercury has passed its squares to Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn from last week, when Mercury was at the end of Aries and making those squares to those Capricorn planets. And so after these various mental struggles that Mercury has just been through, we reach a conjunction to Uranus, which could continue to be jarring, right? Like Uranus is a planet of shocks and interruptions, or it could be like a eureka moment at the end of the tunnel. So here are some points to consider. 1, having access and practice with personal development and healing tools proves to be an important investment in times of stress or uncertainty. There are certain frameworks and practices that are liberating and provide mental and nervous system resiliency. This is a time to be resourceful about the ones you've already collected. Perhaps it's breath work or meditation, EFT tapping, intuitive embodiment, mantra, tantra, etc. Or to be open to the possibility of learning a new skill around self-regulation. Our capacity to be resilient, is something that we build through our practices, so that when things are uncertain, we have some security within ourselves of things that we've built as our personal kind of mental foundation. 2, tranquility and peace is part of the Taurian experience, but it doesn't always look like lounging in a field of flowers with a decadent picnic array. Taurian tranquility, in a juiced up Uranian sense, during this conjunction could be the full experience of any emotion or inner state and taking ownership of it by allowing it to be expressed in sound and movement through the body. 3, Uranus relates to the weird and the radical, Mercury expression, and Taurus the body, in a very similar way that we enjoy or can feel liberated by opening our minds to new ideas that allow us to be in more authentic resonance with ourselves and with reality. Engaging our body in new ways can also make way for new connections. I couldn't help while I was writing this and putting this together to imagine but recall a conversation that I had with someone who told me about, like, I don't know what the context was exactly, but she was saying that she was playing this game with someone about how weird can you get, and they would just kind of like run around the room and get in really weird postures and just be super silly with their bodies and the noises that they were making and just like being as weird as possible. And that sounds like fun, right? And I'm saying something like that, or just tuning into a part of your body and giving it a gesture and sound. Or if you're feeling kind of like stressed out or tense or something, acting that out with your body and like grunting and stomping and just like being authentic in your physical presence. It can be liberating. And maybe you already do that, but maybe you don't. Venus square Neptune is the one we were talking about, and that's on May 3rd at 8:52 p.m. Pacific. And Venus will station retrograde on May 12th, so coming soon. And for much of the retrograde cycle, Venus will be an orb of this square to Neptune. It's a few months that Venus-Neptune will be an influence, even though it will wax and wane in intensity depending on how far back Venus gets and how far out of orb it gets. So here are some points to consider for this transit. 1, we can have increasingly sublime experiences in our relationships and in our day-to-day encounters with people when we acknowledge that other people are mysterious and that they are not us. To whatever extent we project our own value systems, logic, or personality onto others, our ego is essentially getting in the way of understanding another person in their own right. I invite you to challenge this pattern of thinking that other people are like you, where it lives in you so subtly below the radar, and pivot instead to a curiosity about another person's reality. 2, from another vantage point, we are all one, so others are us, but they are at least different facets of the same crystal. Venus in Gemini is attuned to diversity and novelty, and flirts and loves by being able to truly mentally connect with others' perspectives. Paradoxically, to really be at oneness with another requires a level of distance that allows the other to be their own entity. 3, there is a deeper allurement toward romantic fantasy, and perhaps also a divine discontent about it, like, how beautiful, but it could never be, and it hurts too much to think about it. It's really a kind of muscle to be able to dream and be nourished by the dream. So my question for you is how you do that. 4, some people have a deep need for a kind of love that they feel that someone can kind of give them. There's the relationship at hand and the feelings that the relationship provides. As a concrete example, consider a person who pines for someone who is pretty unavailable in some way, but they manage to create a relationship with that person regardless, all the while imagining, I'll seduce this person, they'll love me the way I want someday. Part of the relationship is happening concretely, and a whole other part of the relationship is happening in an abstract fantasy place. From a place of compassion, we might recognize that this is a young kind of love, full of naivete and full of ardor to pursue the situation anyway. In my own earlier life, I sometimes would trade emotional stability or safety or trust for an experience in love, turning a blind eye to the dysfunction of the situation until the relationship ran its course. Venus-Neptune is this kind of softness of boundary. It negotiates. The standards are mutable. as long as a profound aura surrounds the connection. It feels magical, or it feels karmic, or it feels sublime. One can forgive the details. 5. This blindness in love is not the only octave that Venus-Neptune contacts occur within. It may be a necessary stage, and often as one departs this stage, there is a need to take ownership of those very enchanting qualities of the relationship and or the other person possessed, and to own them as qualities of ourselves. 6. In situations of greater availability, reciprocity, or functionality within the relationship, Venus-Neptune can manifest as the process of mutual spiritual development that happens through the container of the relationship. We find ourselves tending to the stuff, the psychological content that naturally emerges from intimacy with another person, and we are devotional about the process of tending to ourselves. We are devotional about feeding and cultivating the relationship and the discovery of collaboration and the witnessing of one another and the mutual enrichment that relationship can provide. Essentially, we live into the householder path of enlightenment. 7. With Venus in Gemini, conversations, books, and teachings about love may be highlighted. We may be exposed or choose to expose ourselves to a variety of perspectives and philosophies on Venusian topics like self-esteem and relationship. Becoming a better conversationalist or learning some new ways of expressing our needs or asking for what we desire may prove important during this cycle. There is much space for confusion with Neptune squaring Venus, but that confusion may direct us toward a good question and eventually a good answer. This may be a time of getting a little granular about the ins and outs of connection. Sure, Venus-Neptune can gloss over the details in a naivete phase, but in a place of mastery, we'll be more curious about understanding and not glossing over the liminal and confusing spaces of our intersections with others. 8. For those who are single but desire partnership and connection, the inner work of Venus-Neptune can relate to creating the space for love in our lives and getting into a deeper alignment with love itself. This can be a deeply spiritual experience. Growing closer to something that we long for is a spiritual journey. We uncover and dissolve our inner blocks, and we attract outer experiences and teachers that we need along the path. If you want an experiential route, you can read and work through the book Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life by Catherine Woodward Thomas. The book, however, is directed toward women. 9. A note on attracting teachers and experiences that we need. Consent still counts. If you're having experiences that you don't like, you're not necessarily karmically resigned to them. You can pivot and create a different experience, or you can meditate on the why of it and why it's crossed your path, or you can do both. Even though, and especially because boundaries are hazy with Venus-Neptune, please value your internal agency to make choices. And then we have the Sun conjunct Mercury in Taurus on May 4th at 2:41 p.m. Pacific. And the two, Sun and Mercury, are recently separated from Uranus and Taurus, but are still in orb of a conjunction to Uranus. Mercury is getting a lot of voltage and energy right now. In our experience, this can look like a very active or potentially stressed mind, an experience that could really often be diffused through grounding. We may experience restorative internal vibrancy through pleasure states. It can be especially soothing to get our hands or feet in grass, dirt, mud, or into touching and working with plants, such as through gardening or wildcrafting. And cooking or working with clay or other sensual handcrafts can also be soothing and energizing. And that is all for our week. Thank you for meditating on the planets with me this week. I very much appreciate you being here with me. And I would love it if you would like this video, leave a comment, let me know what you thought, or what stood out to you about this broadcast and if you had any connections that you made about what you're currently feeling or observing, and how Venus-Neptune is going for you. If you're feeling really dreamy, or you're feeling full of longing, or if you're experiencing healings in the realm of love, tell me about it. I would love to hear. And also know that if you enjoy these forecasts and would like more personalized guidance regarding your personal astrology, I would love to read for you, read your natal chart. And I'm leaving the link for that, for booking a reading with me. I combine my knowledge of astrology, and I specifically do evolutionary astrology readings. So I really focus on Pluto and the lunar nodes to get a sense of your past life karmic themes and how you're working with that in this lifetime. And I combine a meditation on the chart beforehand with my clairvoyant abilities to get a read for you, and then share with you what I get. So what do I mean by clairvoyant? Well, I see these lights that look like stars that pop on the page when I'm writing, or in my inner vision when I'm thinking, and I work with them to calibrate my channel and the information that I share. So everything that I just shared when I was writing it, I was working with these lights that I see. So it's the same thing that I do for my client work, to tune in with what the chart says and have that visual confirmation of my intuition. So I love to get into that space, channel some information, and share that with you. Some other things, I'm pretty expressive on Instagram, so go find me there at Sabrina Monarch and say hello. I post content that I don't really share anywhere else. And I'm also on Twitter, and there I am at Sabrina_Monarch. So leave a comment. I hope you have a beautiful week. Thank you for listening.